Hey guys, welcome back to Luke's Goldies. So, what kind of filter should you get? There are so many filters on the market. You can have your sponge filters, you can have your hang-on back filter, you can have like a submersed filter, you can have a canister filter. I know a lot of people out there that love canister filters, and for a good reason. They're good filters. I'm gonna say right now, you could really have any filter system you want for a goldfish tank. As long as it takes that ammonia and takes it to the nitrate and provides enough aeration for the water and enough oxygen exchange in the water, you're good to go. But there are some pros and cons for different filters. My personal favorite, what I've grown to like the most, are sponge filters. I love simplicity. I love easiness. I'm a chemical engineering student, and I can deal with complex things. I can build complex system. But if we can do something in a simple way, we're taught go the simplest route, do the easiest thing. Always go for the easiest, simplest thing. And that's what I find with sponge filters. You're never going to find something easier than setting up a sponge filter. You're never going to find something easier than cleaning a sponge filter. You're never going to find something cheaper. It's basically the cheapest option also for a sponge filter. For a filter, are sponge filters. All you need to set up a sponge filters. I know I have a hang-on back here because that's actually the first big filter I ever bought. But all you really need to set up a sponge filter is the sponge filter itself and an air pump to pump it in. And basically, the way these things work is if you connect an air pump to that middle part of that sponge filter right there, and air bubbles basically get pumped down all the way to the base of the sponge filter and then rise up, it brings up water with it too. You'll notice, get out of there, Brad. You'll notice that when the air bubbles come out, it's not just air, it's forcing water up too. But that water has to get displaced in the bottom, and then water ends up basically flowing in through the sponge and then getting cleaned that way. And then basically as the air just pushes more water up through the middle column, more water has to take its spot where it's been displaced below, and then water travels in through the sponge. So it's a very simple way it works, and basically the physical, the mechanical filtration of removing particles, and the biological filtration, the bacteria eating the ammonia, all happen in the same thing. So in a lot of filters, you'll have like a filter padding, which removes the actual debris, and you'll have filter media, which holds the bacteria. In a sponge filter, they do the sponge itself is basically both the mechanical filtration and it's also the biological filtration. It also has bacteria in there that removes the ammonia and turns it eventually into nitrate. Now, why is this better than, let's say, a hang-on back filter? I have a hang-on back filter here, but why do I like the sponge filters more? One, with hang-on back filters, the level of water in your tank matters. So because that thing's there and it's also very loud if it's splashing down, you have to have like a high level of water for a hang-on back filter to work correctly. It has to work extra hard to suck up the water if the water level's down, and it's going to be pouring out and splashing all over the place if the water level's down. So you have no freedom of water height if you have a hang-on back filter. And the thing is with sponge filters, you basically, until you hit the sponge filter, you can take the water level up or down as much as you want, and it's still going to work. It's not going to change anything. And also when you compare it to a, let's say, canister filters, you can change the location of the intake and the outtake for a lot of them, but they're just so much cheaper. A lot of canister filters will be $100+ to get a sponge filter and an air pump. You're going to spend maybe like $16 on the air pump, and then for 2 sponge filters on top of that, they're like $5 or $8 each. You're going to spend like $25-30, and you're going to have a filtered tank. Sometimes if you want to get even more, then you have to get more. The nice thing with sponge filters is that you can maybe get like 5 for a tank or 4 for a tank. You can kind of vary it to your liking. If you get one canister filter, like you could overfilter, but are you going to get a whole nother canister filter like thing? That's another couple $100 maybe, $150 or so. So definitely the most cost-effective way to filter a tank is with a sponge filter. Now when it comes to cleaning them, all you have to do is take some tank water and take the sponge and just squeeze it a couple times. A bunch of black junk comes out of there, squeeze it a couple times, put it back on, and your filter sponge is cleaned. For a hang on back, for a canister, for a submersed, it's a little more intensive, a little more rough to do that. You can have junk that gets stuck in the filter media and you have to clean that separately, and your filter paddings themselves, you may eventually have to replace them. They get really messed up. You don't really have to replace these sponges. You just kind of, I've had some sponges in here for like years, and they're still working fine. Taking ammonia straight out of there. Just needs a little squish and some tank water. You put it back on there and you're good to go. So the process of cleaning out sponge filters is extremely easy. Another thing I like about them is there is very little risk for failure. So my hang-on back filter over here, let's say the back of it cracks, all right? Something happens, there's a little leaky thing in whatever majig, and it cracks. The thing's gonna pump water out of the tank and it's gonna leak all over the ground. Let's say you have a canister filter. I actually hear about this happening more often than it should, that a canister filter is leaking. What? If you have your canister filter down at the bottom or some level, you're gonna drink you're gonna drain a hell of a lot of water out of your tank onto your ground. With a sponge filter, there's virtually no room for leaking failure. You have an air pump outside of here, and there is, I have heard some people say, oh, there's the risk of it siphoning, if the air pump fails, there's a risk of the air tube siphoning water out. But not really, because it has to get over the hump. Unless someone's at the bottom of the thing going, like sucking the air tube and pulling the water down over, you're really not going to get it out siphoning water out of the system. So there's no real risk for water leaking out of your system. With a hang-on back filter, there is. With a canister filter, there is some of that degree. If this thing fails, the air pump busts, everything goes to crap, you're perfectly fine. Nothing to worry about. Your fish might get a little messed up if you don't act quickly, but at least your floors are still saved. For another filter, your fish will die and your floors will get messed up. Double kill. You don't want that. So there is the benefit that there's not really any risk for, spilling all over your ground and failure in that sense. It's all kind of inside the tank. Now, one thing about sponge filters that people might not like is that they might not be as effective as getting the water crystal clear. But I'll show you right now. I'll put a camera roll over this. This water and the tanks where I have just sponge filters, the water is crystal clear. If you have enough sponge filters and you're not overstocking and overfeeding your fish, you will have pristine, clear water. Now, other filters might be more effective at this, but I think sponge filters are just great at that. They also do a great job at breaking surface tension. They're great for oxygenating the water. You have that bubbling at the surface constantly. You're breaking the surface tension, and you're letting oxygen just easily exchange into the water. A lot of hang-on back filters, they do that, but not as much to a large degree. And some canister filters, actually, if the intake and outtake are submerged, you don't really get that much aeration at all on the surface. You don't get that much surface breaking. But for sponge filters, you get great surface break. They're very easy to clean. They're very cheap. I stand by them. You might need to have multiple sponge filters, but that's fine. They're cheap. They're easy. And when compared to like a canister filter, you might only need one. You might only maybe need two. But you'll need multiple sponge filters to properly filter a goldfish tank. But they're just the best. They're the best. They're a little noisy. That's another complaint I have. A little noisy, bubble. But with noise comes surface breaking, the breaking of the surface tension, which is a benefit for the goldfish. You get more oxygen in the water. So yeah, that's my little rant on sponge filters. That's why I think you should get them. They're super cheap compared to anything else, and they're super easy. And especially for a beginner out there, the two things that hold back beginners are price of a lot of these things. It's an expensive hobby, and the complexity. A lot of things in this hobby are kind of complex. Sponge filters are not. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Luke Scoldies out.